Good day. I am Jerome Lucaes, Marketing Director, responsible for the low carbon aluminium program in Rusal. Rusal is the largest low carbon aluminium producer in the world, and we're part of the EN Plus group, which is the largest independent hydropower producer in the world. I'm happy to share with you our view about the imperatives for supply chain decarbonization and how the aluminium industry, and especially Rusal, are addressing it. Let me share a few slides. I hope it works. And let's talk about the challenge first that we are facing. Aluminium is a key material that is enabling the zero carbon society and circular society. Especially aluminium demand will grow because of its use required in the green energy sector and in the e-mobility. Those two segments together will represent demand growth of over 13 million tons by 2030. So now aluminium is very energy intensive, and therefore the global emissions generated by this industry are quite huge, 1.1 billion tons per year. To put this in perspective, the global anthropogenic emissions are at 50 billion tons per year. So it means that the aluminium industry represents 2% of those global emissions. Also, to compare with other industries, the cement industry represents 8% of the global emissions, and the steel industry represents also 8%. So now the industry has set decarbonization pathway. You can see it on the slide. The emission trajectory going towards zero in 2050, which means if we look at the intensity of CO2 emission per ton of aluminium for the primary aluminium industry, which is currently at 16 tons, it means that it needs to decrease to 11.5 by 2030 and to almost zero, 0.5 by 2050. The challenge is immense. If we look at the spread of the emissions for this industry, you can easily imagine that 60% of those emissions are related to the energy that is consumed at the smelters, which is the biggest challenge of decarbonization for this industry. It's about a change of source of energy for power stations that are huge and not easy and very expensive to change, and most of the time depends on regional and national infrastructure. The second big source of emission in the aluminium industry are also within the smelting, are related to the process emission, are actually related to the chemistry, because the chemistry of the electrolysis producing aluminium with the reduction by carbon anodes produce CO2 in the atmosphere. And those emissions also represent something like 15% of the global emission of the sector. And they can be reduced by solutions like inert anode technology, which is a promising technology, revolutionary technology that would completely remove the CO2 emissions and actually replace the emission by emission of oxygen. The third source of reduction of emission are related to the alumina refining, which requires a lot of thermal energy to digest the bauxite and transform the bauxite into alumina. And the sector is working on um, energy switches from fuels or coal to gas in a first transition, and then to either renewable energy with uh, renewable boilers or um, energy feedstock from hydrogen, green hydrogen, for example. And the fourth big challenge of this decarbonization is about to get to full circularity and to increase the level of recycling of this industry, which represent, in terms of challenge, about 20% of the global challenge of this industry. Now, if we look at the recycling, it's also very important to understand that um, over time, the most of the aluminium demand growth will be captured by recycling, but still, in 2030, the recycling will be less than 50% for the global demand. Today, it's about 25% of the global demand is met by product that comes to the end of their life. Um, and through very high recycling rates today, the aluminium industry is already very efficient. But the challenge is that most of the aluminium is kept in use by long-lasting applications. So aluminium, which is in a building, does not come back because the building is, there for 50 or 60 years. So primary aluminium will still be dominant for the to meet the aluminium demand, and at least until 2035. Now, what Rusal is doing about the decarbonization, our EN Plus group, have committed to carbon neutrality. That was beginning of last year. We're one of the first in the hard-to-abate sector to commit for a net zero, with an intermediate target to reduce our emission in the group by 35%. Now, we start from already a low carbon aluminum base, because at Rusal, over 95% of the aluminum that we produce is produced with renewable hydropower. That gives us a significant competitive advantage with a carbon footprint that is today um, 5 times lower than the industry average at the smelters. And if we consider the full scope of the carbon footprint from the bauxite to the cast house, cradle to gate, from mine to ingots, we are about 3 times lower than the industry average. This is just a starting point, because we need to come to zero carbon by 2050. Um, Another part of what is important for the producers, and Rusal is taking a leadership position in this, is to engage with the supply chain and with our customers to be transparent about our carbon footprint. And why is it so important? Because if we look from the perspective of our consumers, the automotive sector or the consumer goods sector, um, they have also the responsibility and made commitment to get to zero carbon. But the big part of the carbon that they are responsible for, that they generate, sits in their value chain, sits in actually the material that they consume. So the steel, the glass, the plastic, and the aluminum. So that's why those consumers, they need to better evaluate, to better measure the carbon footprint of what they buy, in order to set targets and to work and choose suppliers who have a lower carbon value proposition and are committed to decrease over time. Rusal has been a leading um, company providing transparency. We've been the first in the industry in 2017 to link our commercial contract with a guarantee of carbon footprint and with a certificate of carbon footprint that is traceable to a single smelter. Um, we are all engaged in a very important and race towards zero carbon, which doesn't mean that we can and should forget about the other aspects of sustainability. Therefore, the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative is a very important standard that covers all the aspects of sustainability, from um, all the environment topics, biodiversity, emission, water consumption, energy consumption, and also all the human aspects related to the relation to communities, and so on. So Rusal is SI certified, and the SI certification is a strong part of our value proposition for our Allow brand, which is the low carbon aluminium brand of Rusal. I would just like to finish by um, explaining the big challenge that is ahead of everyone in the industry to decarbonize. We have many blocks that we need to work to get to zero carbon. Here are on this screen the main topics that we're working on. I mentioned about inert anode, which is one of the very promising technology to be able to produce aluminium with zero process emission. Recycling is also a big part of the strategy going forward, and we look at all the elements of our value chain to decrease, such as working to switch our energy source at our alumina refineries, and eventually replacing it with green hydrogen, working on the optimization of raw material, working on, of course, energy efficiency and replacement of older assets by state-of-the-art technology. All these represent a basket of measures, technologies, and investment that will be required. EN Plus Group already has engaged on a program of 5 billion of investment between now and 2030, and there will be more necessary to come going forward. I'm very happy to answer any of your questions that you may have. You can reach me here at my email address. If you want to engage, jerome.lucaes@rusal.com, and we'll be happy to meet most of you in the next um, version of this conference in person. Thank you very much for your attention.